Hi, welcome. I guess I don't need to tell you that this video is gonna be about Jinx. As every other cool cat out there, I've also seen both seasons of Arcane now, and I was hoping she would get another costume in the second season. And in the end of the final chapter, I finally got my wish. So at the point of making this video, there's actually no real proper published references from season 2, at least not of Jinx. So my apologies if you're looking at this after there are proper, real references to work from. I've really tried my best to find some good references and take many screenshots of this show to try and figure out how everything looks. But current me have no idea. Also, I think that the wig work and the makeup might need to be their own videos. If you are interested in seeing a separate video for the wig and the makeup, interact with the video, leave a comment, subscribe, whatever people do. But I won't hold you up anymore. Let's just begin. Okay, let's start with something small and simple. The gloves. I mapped out my screenshots to see the different layers of the gloves and different textures, and then since we only had these great references, I also compared it to season 1 Jinx and worked out some of the questions from there. Then to give myself the finger, I started by mapping it out, cutting it out in thin foam, and then attaching to fabric. Then I connected that fingy to elastic straps to help keep it in place underneath the glove. I really want to remake this with some flexible 3D printed armor instead without any fabric under it, because the movement test was not it. But it was simple and quick, so it works for now. The gloves were also my first experiment with arcane type painting. I started with dark colors and worked myself up to lighter colors and highlights. I mixed some acrylic paints with softener as a fabric medium, but you can always expect some cracking on pleather fabric due to its surface. And this was so much harder than I expected. I think it would have been a lot easier to start with practicing this on hard surfaces or foam pieces before fabric. On to the top. My headache. There was literally not a single frame I managed to catch in the show to properly show the back of it. And I also wanted to try and map out how the bandages were wrapped around her, but avoid them being too overlapped so that it wouldn't be too bulky. So because there still isn't any references of the backside of Jinx's top, I actually used 7xx's Jinx Progress as a reference point for mine. I hope I pronounced that correctly. She made a Jinx costume and she actually got a turnaround, so I used her pattern and her video as a ballpark for mine. Please go check her out. Let's go. I've seen many people make this part of the top with foam and they look amazing, but I wanted to try and make this in fabric so that I could pack it awfully and crinkled and crunkled without having to worry about the shape of it. And I'm also constantly afraid of tearing my foam when I'm wearing it if it's thin, so this seemed like a better choice for someone like me. And then I also used some cotton fabric and lining for our little shark hoodie. Choosing to do this part in fabric did add a lot of hours of work of hand sewing and gluing for every single little piece of decoration on this tiny piece of shoulder straps. And this is where I regretted my choices, and life, and the loss of feeling in my fingertips. For the bandage wrapping, I ended up using just a simple cotton stretch fabric, but not too thin, because I didn't want it to be translucent while I was wearing it. For the hood, I once again had issues getting any clear screenshots from the show, could you imagine, of the painted sides. And I'll show you just how different all of the official versions of this hood is. So, yeah, it's a thing. I made some teeths with white leather, interfaced with low quality foam, and top stitched it on. And when pinned to the top at this point, this is what we have. Then I decorated the hood, starting with some embroidery thread around the teethsies and around the edge of the hood, and added some contrast to it with fluorescent Posca pencils. So when I finally decided to meet my nemesis, the painted sides, I decided to go with the interpretation that was the closest to what I could decipher from the show. I painted a white acrylic shape first to make sure that the other colors really popped. Then did the little drop shadows in fluorescent Posca markers. I love markers. And basically just mixed a neon paint that I liked and painted inside the lines. But I did add some slight color shift in it, hoping that it would look more Arcane-like. And then copy-paste the work process on the other side. This time with some clips from the live stream, and you can here also see how the stitches at the top of the hood looked before I added the fluorescent paint on top of them. Then I did some instant coffee dip dye test for the bandages and ended up really liking it. And then I promptly went on to basically ruin the nice dye with this paint job that I ended up hating. But fixing that, I'll leave for another day. Or another lifetime. Last up, I modeled the top details in Blender, and I printed it on my resin printer and attached them to the top. Since the shoulder straps are made with fabric, I can just simply slip on the top without any openings, which is really nice. And of course, I had to be a little extra and make the hood detachable. Now, let's make pants! Alright y'all, I refuse to make uncomfortable pants, so I used scuba for this. I mapped out the base shapes of the pants, and the hardest part was knowing exactly where the wrapped around straps were supposed to be, and drafted a base pattern. First test left me to make some alterations to the fit, because I usually leave an extra centimeter or two, because I'm scared. The pants ended up being so comfortable that I kind of want to make an extra pair. And then on to details. I made them separately, and then pinned them on and hand sewed them onto the pants. And then I slapped some neon paint on them. Look at that. Delicious. The belts turned out to be more or less the exact same design as they were in Season 1, so I finally had some good references to use. Hallelujah! I made all of the belts in foam, 2mm and 4mm thick. Sanded the sides to make them smooth, added some slight leather texture to the narrow belt, and let the hanging pieces be made in fabric so that I wouldn't accidentally sit on them one day and break them. I added the belt buckles and added fasteners to the inside of the belt and the outside of the pants to make sure that they wouldn't ride up or twist around while I was wearing them. Arcane really said, "Belt loops? Never heard of her." The belt decorations were once again modeled in Blender. You can definitely tell I'm no professional. Then they were printed and attached before painting it all. And this is the moment I realized I'm actually happy with the paint job on this costume for the first time. Maybe a little late in the game, but I'll take it. Guys, this is the day I get to leave my apartment. Can you imagine? We finally got the shoes. The shoes were a really fun project, but I was mostly confused for most of the time with the amount of details and where they were and how they were and who am I again? I loved the base shoe so much that I ended up deciding to try and make all of those decorations detachable. Why am I like this? You've had one headache, what about a second headache? First off was trying to figure out how I would fake the side ribbons, since I wanted to save the shoe and not have to cover the entire thing or cut a big hole on the sides. And I ended up with the left solution here, simulating a raised part by adding a folded bias tape on top of the ribbons. I then did some cutouts on the soles and painted the soles with gesso and Mod Podge. Then I attached the snaps for all the decorations so that they would be detachable, and punched some holes for the ribbons to be laced through on the sides. At this point, I realized the side ribbons were flat and not round, so I decided to paint some white ribbon I already had because I just wanted to get it done and not have to order more lace. And once dry, just laced it according to the picture and fastened with a knot. And then I added that little fake edge with the bias tape. And before lacing the shoes, I tried out an idea I had to fake the length of the left shoe. The left shoe seems to be cut short while the right one is knee-high. Once again, I wanted to save the base shoe. I made a 2-layer spandex sock to see if that was enough to hide the shape of the shoe underneath the pants. Then it was time for the foam details. We made some more belts. We're experts now. And some fake metal thingies on the heels and toes. They are the same as in Season 1, so once again, we actually had some real references. Thank Jeebus. These parts I wanted to make in foam so that they were a little more flexible and not so fragile for bumping into things, and easy to mend if they ever broke while I was out walking. I then painted them with acrylic paint mixed with Hexflex and started with the dark paints and worked myself up to the highlights. Even though they're supposed to be silver and gold, I think that it looks a little more Arcane-esque if we keep the gold and silver matte, trying to make it look a little more 2D. Last step is once again to model the small details in Blender and print them on my resin printer. We paint, and we attach. Once again, attaching everything in a way so that they are detachable. I sort of just guesstimated how the green and pink laces were supposed to be twisted and wrapped around the shoe, since it looked very different in almost every single reference, but with some small similarities. And that was it! Guys, the neon shoelaces really neoned. It looked so good. I did have a video somewhere of me painting the shoes, but apparently I lost it in the process of uploading and moving everything, so we're just gonna have to live with that. But this is also where I realized that even if all the decorations are detachable, the paint isn't. Oh well. And here we can see the different layers of the bottom half of the costume, pants, then shoes, then belts. Ignore that I had apparently forgotten to paint the gold detail on her knee at this point. I promise I noticed the day after. Jinxie also has a couple of small details we can't forget to make. A necklace and some nails. The necklace was just some suede ribbon long enough to wrap several times around my neck and with a little jewelry hook at the end. For the nails, I decided to make gel nails so that I wouldn't have to paint the cracked paint effect every time I wore this costume. This ended up maybe not being the best idea.
En av Sveriges bästa cosplayare, ladies and gentlemen.
That happened because I ended up not cleaning my nails good enough before the shoot, so I constantly dropped nails around me all the time. One even landed inside of my bottle of wig glue, and is therefore lost to human touch, but immortalized forever. But I mean, it's the thought of it that counts, right? I guess I could just make another one. So let's just enjoy how they looked before they got lost. I saved the making of the wig for last because I'm not gonna go too deep into it. I feel like this process is so long that it would need its own video. The first couple clips look insane because I was at a friend's craft evening, so I couldn't really film. But I started off by sectioning off my wig, blunt cutting the sides, and then carefully working them shorter and shorter, making sure not to expose too much of the wig cap underneath. I also decided to ventilate the sides of this wig so that I could get a little more natural hairline, and also allow myself to be able to cut the sides even shorter. I didn't want them to look glued down. Then I added some hair on to the front as well to make her widow's peak. Then we are on to shaping the side cuts and the little ducktails of her. I did this with hairspray and heat. It was quite interesting to try and style this in a way that makes it look homemade, as if Jinx cut it herself, without also making it look really bad in real life. Last up was crimping and shaping the bangs, and I ended up making them way too cartoony at first, so I had to go in and redo the entire thing. And I also added the little purple streaks at the front with some clear liquid contact glue. And also not forgetting to cut that in to match the rest of the wig before doing the last shaping. And just to show you all my little cartoon of shame, This is how the wig looked in the first version before I realized that that's not how it looks in the show at all. And here's how it ended up looking while I was wearing it. So in less than a week, we're having our Jinx shoot. I'm just trying to see if there's any poses or imagery from the show that I really wanted to recreate, and looking at some of the color schemes of the scenery in Arcane. I already know that my photographer is great with this, so I probably don't have to, but it's nice to come in a little prepared knowing what you want out of the shoot. Also today, it is March and it's actually kind of warm out. It is around 11, 12 degrees Celsius out, so maybe I won't be as cold on this shoot. Maybe I'll actually stay warm for once. I hope so. The costume is actually pretty naked. So hopefully I can jump cut to a really cool shoot right here.
Din lilla.
This is great content.
You're skimming. You're skimming.
The star of the show.
Connected. Actual semi-professional cosplayer here, ladies and gentlemen.
Semi-professional.
Sometimes
Follow the life of an actual semi-professional cosplayer.